but for most it will be fine and dry with sunny spells. Across southern countries, the earlier rain will be clearing away to the east. Meanwhile, we can expect some further showers in the west, with some sunny spells in between. The band of showery rain will continue south-eastwards later, with colder air from the north bringing some snow showers. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Good afternoon, it's 2 o'clock. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. A shooting in a pub in Merseyside on Christmas Eve that killed a woman and injured a number of others has been described as heartbreaking. The woman died from her injuries in hospital. An investigation is underway. 3 men were also taken to hospital with gunshot wounds after the incident at the Lighthouse Inn on the Wirral just before midnight. Millions of people across the country will be tuning in to watch King Charles give his first Christmas speech as monarch. Charles recorded the broadcast, which airs in an hour's time. Speaking earlier, our GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker explained what the speech today will signify for the King as he pays tribute to his late mother.
He's expected to pay tribute to the life and legacy of his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, in his first televised Christmas message to the nation and the Commonwealth. He is the first king, actually, to have a televised address, to give that message on Christmas Day. It was King George V who delivered the first Christmas message, but that was via radio, and his grandfather, King George VI, also delivered his via radio. It was only during the reign of Queen Elizabeth that we actually started to see television Christmas messages. But the King recorded it on December the 13th, on that Tuesday, in the choir of St George's Chapel. Very significant that it was in St George's Chapel, and that is because that is the final resting place of Queen Elizabeth II and her late husband, Prince Philip. So that is why perhaps the King is going to be paying tribute to his late mother in that speech.
The King has attended the royal family's traditional Christmas Day church service in Sandringham. The King and the Queen Consort were joined by the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children. The Earl and Countess of Wessex were alongside them. This year's gathering at Sandringham is the first time the royal family spent Christmas at the Norfolk residence since 2019. Over 1 million Americans and Canadians are facing Christmas Day without power as a winter storm continues to sweep across the United States. According to reports, weather-related car accidents in the US have left at least 16 dead. Nearly 3,000 flights were cancelled yesterday, with some airports closed. New York's governor has declared a state of emergency. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have shared a festive picture painted by their 9-year-old son, Prince George. For those listening to us on the radio, the painting shows a portrait of a reindeer in the snow with a sky blue background alongside 2 robins. And the message attached to the picture says, "Merry Christmas." TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. I'll be back with more news at the top of the hour.
Hello and welcome to GB News Christmas Special, remembering our Queen with me, Alastair Stewart. For the next hour, I'll be joined by a host of guests who knew Her Majesty personally, those who worked with the Queen and royal experts, and we will pay tribute to her life of service as we all embark upon our first Christmas without her and the first under our new King. So of the late Queen, to say that she was a constant in my life is no exaggeration. I was born in the year of her accession, 1952. I reported on her death, on the winnings of several of her offspring and the birth of her heir's heir. I met her quite a few times in a personal capacity and on charitable duties. She was charm and elegance personified. But her visit to my beloved Ebony Horse Club in Brixton captured for me who she really was as a person and what she stood for. As far away from Buckingham Palace as imaginable, she visited because her daughter-in-law Camilla is president and royal patron of the Ebony Horse Club. She met lots of young children, many of them from the wrong side of the tracks, learning all about what she knew so very well, highlighting that anyone can thrive in life if they're supported and encouraged, and that they will find no finer creatures in life than some of her beloved horses and ponies. Now, there were lots of dignitaries there too, but for her it was all about the children and the horses. She seemed totally at peace and in her element. And that is how I will always remember her, our late Queen, a good woman and a lover of horses. Giles Brandreth, friend of the royals who met the Queen on several occasions. His new biography offers insight into the intimate life of Queen Elizabeth, including how she dealt with the death of her own beloved husband, Philip. I spoke to him about his new book, and he paid his own tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth.
Giles Brandreth, your latest book is about friendship. It's about love, it's about working together, but also it does exactly what it says on the title page. It is an intimate portrait?
That's what I wanted to achieve. A couple of days before the Queen's death, I happened to be at Windsor Castle in the Royal Library. And there they showed me a portrait of Elizabeth I. First of all, a reminder that we've had a royal family in this country for more than 1,000 years. And they said to me, this portrait of Elizabeth I, it was one that she sent to her brother, Edward VI. They were both the children of King Henry VIII. And with the portrait went a letter from Elizabeth I, written in her beautiful handwriting, in which she said, I'm sending you this outward image of myself, but I would love to share with you my inward mind. And I thought to myself, I'm writing this book, wouldn't it be wonderful to try and reveal to people the inward mind of Elizabeth II? We all know what she looked like, but what was she really like? And since I was lucky enough to meet her many years ago, first time was the 2nd of May 1968, I can give you the date because I keep a diary, and she won't have remembered the people that she met, most of them, because she met tens of thousands of people, but anyone who ever met the Queen can remember that moment. And because I keep a diary, I kept a record of all my encounters with the Queen, and there were many over the years. From that first encounter, when I was a student, aged 20, at Oxford University, she was 42, she came, and the first thing I noticed was how the atmosphere in the room changed. Nobody was ever normal with the Queen. There was a kind of invisible moat around her, and yet she was always normal herself. She was always herself. But everybody else responded in a different way. The other thing I noticed on that first day was I reprimanded the President of the Union, William Waldegrave, who was a couple of years older than me, because we were going into the Oxford Union. He wasn't carrying her umbrella. It was raining. And I said to him, you should have carried the Queen's umbrella. He said, oh, no, no. Her Majesty insists on carrying her own umbrella, otherwise the rain trickles down her neck. So I wanted to write a book that showed you what she was really like.
I think you have done that, but it also touches upon another very, very serious point. This relationship began with the late Duke of Edinburgh, and that was as a result of shared interests and working. It wasn't court frippery or queuing up at some line-up to shake hands and be introduced. This was you and him caring passionately about something that very few people would have thought of immediately as being a shared passion between the late Duke of Edinburgh and Giles Brandreth.
Well, I've met the Duke of Edinburgh because I got involved in a charity called the National Playing Fields Association, now Fields in Trust. And the reason the Duke of Edinburgh was involved is that it was founded by the Queen's father, who became George VI when he was Duke of York in the 1920s. And it was to look after playing fields, playgrounds, recreation, sport for young people. And the Duke of Edinburgh took it on as his first national charity when he married Princess Elizabeth back in 1947. And it was his passion project. And I became involved and got to meet him and found he was a very different person from the caricature that most of us got to know. And he asked me to write a short biography of him, which I did, which was quite challenging because I had to take it into him and he had to, he corrected it and it was all a bit frightening. But through him, I got to meet the Queen, and then later when I was a member of Parliament, I got to meet the Queen officially. And to see their relationship was fascinating at close hands. They weren't lovey-dovey in the modern way. There are no photographs anywhere of the Queen and Prince Philip holding hands or kissing, but they were a team. What was extraordinary about the Queen is when she made a commitment, she kept to it. I think one of the reasons that people were so moved when she died wasn't simply our longest-serving monarch, wasn't simply to see somebody whose commitment was so real over so many years, was that clearly he was a rather unusual person. In a dark world, you watch the news, see what's happening in Ukraine, you think, actually, here's somebody who was good. And I felt at the time of the funeral, people were almost reaching out to touch that goodness, whatever generation they were. Somebody who was consistent, kind, kept their word. And her marriage to Prince Philip was extraordinary, and she accepted him for who he was. And I think they accepted each other for who they were.
You are one of the most well-read people I know, and you've written a number of really impressive biographies and books about the royal family. Were there lines in producing this that you imposed upon yourself that you could not cross, that there were restrictions that you placed upon that because you had had that intimate and private access over the years?
That was quite a challenge because I didn't want to put particularly ladies-in-waiting, people who've been around them, in a difficult position and I didn't want to quote anybody anonymously. So that was the challenge. I decided not to show the book to living members of the royal family before publishing it, which I did with my Duke of Edinburgh book, for two reasons. One, I thought, actually, I don't think they'll want to read it. The reason I say that is that somebody told me that they had, when the film The King's Speech came out, it was rather a moving film about George VI and his speech impediment, somebody said to the Queen, "It's a wonderful film, you should see it." And she said, "Well, why would I want to? It's about my parents. I knew them." And this is a book for people who don't know the Queen, to show her to you, so that maybe people who did know her, why would you want to read it?
Well, there are a number of revelations, as it were, within it, and it's been serialised in one of the newspapers as well as being available, and I thoroughly recommend people to get a copy of it and read it from cover to cover. Perhaps the most shocking revelation is that the death certificate says that she died of old age. Not so.
I don't think it's shocking. I felt I was writing a biography, and it has to go from birth to death. And so I was simply reporting that I had heard that she had a form of a bone marrow cancer. But I wasn't surprised. Indeed, I predicted that the death certificate would say old age, because when a patient is over the age of about 80, and when the person signing the death certificate has been their doctor for some years, that is one of the options that is open to them. And indeed, that was the case with the Duke of Edinburgh. So I felt, as a reporter, because it is a biography, I should put what I knew on the page. But you're right. Are you intruding on people's privacy? And in a sense I am, because I'm quoting from conversations with the Queen, which I would not have done during her lifetime. But I've done it because I wanted people to know, people I think did know how compassionate she was and also how sharp she was, but they maybe didn't realise what a wry sense of humour she had. We got a flavour of that when we got, most recently, only earlier this year, you know, the Jubilee, the wonderful Paddington Bear sketch. But she did have this wonderful sense of humour, and she had a side to her which we didn't often see. She was quite a shy person, I think. And as happens sometimes with actors who are shy, they come to life on the stage. And I did have an interesting conversation with her about the war years. And she talked about her father during the war. Her father was the really important person in her life. And incidentally, at the anniversary of his death, he died from cancer, she would always, or almost always, on that particular day or around then, visit a cancer hospital or a hospice. She was very aware of that all her life. So for her, the war years, her father at Windsor, her father leading the country, Winston Churchill, these were important figures. But privately, what she loved were the entertainers who came to Windsor Castle to entertain the royal family. I wanted the book to make people smile, laugh, realise who she was. She had a sense of humour, but she wasn't frivolous. She took serious things seriously. And you mentioned how she'd met everyone. Yes. And she was very careful. She would never betray who she liked most, because she was very even-handed. Two things to say to you. One is, I remember going to the Royal Variety Show with her, sitting in the Royal Box. And the Duke of Edinburgh, if he liked an act, would be loud in his applause, and then he'd look at the programme and say, "Oh, not Elton John again." But the Queen was very even-handed, gave everyone the same amount of applause. And I said to her at the interval, "You seem to enjoy the first half very much." She said, "Well, I did." I said, "You seem to enjoy every act equally. Did you?" And she said, "Well, perhaps not entirely, but I like to applaud everybody in case, because this is on television, in case their families are looking."
Oh, actually, that's really considerate.
She was very thoughtful like that. And the only exception I found when trying to tease out of her who that she'd met that was particularly interesting or memorable, and she had met everybody, from Marilyn Monroe and Frank Sinatra through to Madonna and even Vladimir Putin. She'd met everybody. The one exception to mentioning somebody that she would give would be Nelson Mandela. And she admired him so much, and she said this, because he had emerged from 27 years in prison without any rancour.
You wrote several very moving pieces when she died, and obviously the book is now here before us, and people will reflect upon the content of it. But I'm going to eyeball you as an old chum and simply ask you this. What is your personal tribute to her?
What I think is remarkable about the Queen is that it's her personality, her nature, her values that we want to remember and cherish. When she died, there were in London on that day for her funeral more heads of state, more prime ministers, more presidents than had ever gathered in any one city before at any one time. When Queen Victoria died, the world mourned. She was then our longest reigning sovereign, but she had executive power. She could do things. The Queen couldn't do anything. The Queen could only be what she was. And, when Queen Victoria died, we were the #1 country. Now we're the 21st most populous country in the world, 6th largest GDP, and yet that woman personified the best of British. So, what's not to be grateful for? And to have lived such a long life, and to have been so consistent, to have been an exemplar of goodness, well, it's fantastic.
You said earlier that she was very clear in conversation with you and others that she owed so much to her father, who she adored, but the philosophy, the rules of engagement of the job, she got a lot of it. It struck me very powerfully from the moment of Charles becoming King Charles III that he drew so much from his mother. I mean, that very first speech to the nation she could have written, it was an echo of one of her most famous speeches, and it was remarkable. Was that recognition of what you can learn from Mater and Pater and pass down through the generations perhaps one of her greatest gifts to him?
Well, I think the way the transition has happened has been brilliant. I mean, he hit the ground, not running, but obviously mourning, and yet he said all the right things on the first day. And I thought, yes, it's going to be all right. And also he made it crystal clear that he was going to be a constitutional monarch. Nothing ever is, set in stone. There will be changes, but basically he is taking on from her, just as the Queen Consort is taking on from the Duke of Edinburgh. At that birthday lunch that I referred to, she said that she was going to follow his rule. Look up, look out, say less, do more, get on with the job. That's what they're both going to do. And I wish them all the best of luck.
May I just say thank you for your friendship and loyalty over many, many years, and for your kind support of GB News, upon which you appear as often as we ask you to, which is lovely.
And
May we wish you a very happy Christmas.
And I'd like to wish
year.
you a very happy Christmas, a peaceful New Year, and whichever of us two lives the longest will be there to make the tributes. So if Alistair goes before I do, I shall be saying some very nice words about him. But if I go before you do,
I shall be delighted to reciprocate or get just a little ahead of him. But I'm not going to open a book on the odds. Giles Brandreth, God bless. Thank you so much.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mild for most and some sunny spells, but also windy with showery rain. Let's take a look at the details. Starting off looking at Scotland, and here there will be some showery rain across southern parts this afternoon, whilst colder air brings snow showers from the north later on. It will be very wet for a time across Northern Ireland as a band of heavy showery rain pushes eastwards with some strong winds. This same band of showery rain will push across northwestern England too, though it will take a bit of time to push across all parts. Sunny spells for much of Wales this afternoon, with a few showers feeding in from the northwest, turning wetter later as the band of showery rain sweeps across, temperatures widely in double figures. Meanwhile, it's looking mostly dry with decent sunny breaks across much of the East Midlands. More southern parts may have a little rain for a time, but this should clear through the afternoon. A similar picture across East Anglia. There will be some mostly light rain for a time, mainly across Essex, but for most it will be fine and dry with sunny spells. Across southern countries, the earlier rain will be clearing away to the east. Meanwhile, we can expect some further showers in the west, with some sunny spells in between. The band of showery rain will continue south-eastwards later, with colder air from the north bringing some snow showers. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. In June this year, the whole of the United Kingdom joined in what was the biggest party of the century as we marked the Queen's magnificent 70-year reign, making her the longest ever serving monarch. The Platinum Jubilee saw a weekend full of events, including the historic Trooping the Colour, a service of thanksgiving, and the Platinum Jubilee party at the Palace. During the Jubilee weekend, the Queen missed a number of events due to ill health, but the world was surprised when she, along with the other working royals, made an appearance on the balcony at Buckingham Palace to wave to thousands of well-wishers and, of course, watch her beloved red arrows fly over the palace. Well, joining me now to take a look back at the whole weekend is royal commentator and expert, my good friend Jenny Bond. Jenny, with respect, you are literally one of those been there, done it royal correspondents. But did you ever, in your deepest dreams and imaginings, think you'd be covering this amazing Jubilee event?
Oh, my goodness me. No, I don't think, even with the best will in the world, many of us thought that the late Queen now would manage to reign for a full 70 years and that grand old age, take part, however minimally, in those wonderful celebrations. It was a fantastic event.
What struck me as well, and I wonder if it struck you too, was that it was a magic mixture of the formal, the traditional, and the very, very informal out on the streets of Her Majesty's kingdom.
Yeah, in many ways it followed the pattern of previous Jubilees. There is a sort of routine to it, but there was a special joy about this one, a celebration unlike any other, as you say. And it's a wonderful mix of the bizarre, isn't it, and the pageantry, the formality and the informality, the craziness of that concert, and the magic moment, obviously, of seeing Her Majesty the Queen having tea with Paddington Bear. I mean, that's the moment that I remember.
The rest of the family played a blinder as well, particularly the children, the very young children as well. I mean, it was clearly a family outing, but goodness me, it was a very cleverly constructed tableau of this family, and it nodded toward the future.
Yes, it did. Yes, I think everyone remembers the pictures of Louis rather misbehaving as the concert progressed. It was a long concert for children to sit through. And it was lovely to see little Louis sitting on his grandfather's knee. Charles looked very at home looking after the kids. And as you say, we saw the core members of the family there at many of the events. And the concert, we saw the extended family. Actually, we saw Mike Tyndall, didn't we? And he was joking around with George. So it was a delightful event. Made entirely, I think, by that tableau of the Queen with Paddington Bear, and that she had kept a secret from her family and everyone. So when they saw her come up on screen, pulling a marmalade sandwich from her bag, they were absolutely gobsmacked.
One other thing I wanted your thoughts on, and I suspect that it did have the late Queen's fingerprints all over it, and that was the imagery of the family in the sense of an heir apparent, and an heir presumptive. Here they are. Here are the special ones. Here are the ones who will carry on the good work.
Yes, I think it had the Queen's fingerprints over it, but also Charles's. We've all known that Charles has been intent on making it known that he thinks that the monarchy should be slimmer, sleeker, fewer, whatever you want to call them, hangers on, fewer of extended family, and a core of working royals. And within that, a core of the immediate successors to the throne. And as you say, that was the emphasis. Time and again, we were seeing those absolute key members in direct line of succession to the throne. And that's the message that was put across. There's plenty of them now. The succession is certainly guaranteed because Charlotte can take over, if necessary, obviously, if anything, God forbid, happened to George. And then we've got Louis. So we've got the kings and maybe queens of succession sort of firmly there.
Let me finish with the personal, because obviously with the death of the Queen, he not only became the king, a job for which he had been waiting a very long time, but he also became the head of the family. And at this time of year, we all know that for the royal family, it's as important, perhaps even more important, than for ordinary families up and down the land. How do you imagine it will be for them trying to host and enjoy and celebrate this first Christmas without the matriarch?
Well, it is going to be a difficult Christmas for them. They're going to gather at Sandringham, most of them. I don't think Harry and Meghan will be there, but the rest of them are going to gather at Sandringham. And obviously there will be that empty chair. Whether they'll actually leave it empty, I don't know. But the absence of the Queen obviously will be keenly felt, not just by the family, but when we watch them go to church. We've been so used to the image of the Queen arriving lately in a car and just being there at the head of the family. And now that's Charles. It's a bit of a poisoned chalice, really, because it's quite a troubled family in so many ways, as we've seen in recent weeks and months. But that is his job now, not only to be our head of state, but head of that family. And Christmas hopefully will be a time when they put any difficulties behind them, get round the table and tuck into their turkey.
Let us hope so indeed, and wish them well. And Jenny, thanks for all of your kindness, friendship and support over the year. May we at GB News also wish you a very happy Christmas and a peaceful New Year. Jenny, thank you so much for your time.
You too. Thank you.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
For many of us across the United Kingdom and Commonwealth, the Queen's speech was a staple of Christmas Day festivities. Christmas, in her own words, was like no other, and her familiar elegance and reassuring presence will surely be missed. With every address that she delivered, Her Majesty would share her personal reflections on the year that had passed, touching on everything from global events and current issues to national highlights, personal losses or gains. She gave thanks and always managed to inspire, motivate and touch the hearts of all of us. They were truly her speeches, and she decided on everything that went into them, even down to the little photographs that appeared beside her every year. To give us an insight and a reflection upon all of that, I caught up with Her Majesty's former press officer, Dickie Arbiter, who witnessed firsthand how they were written, produced and delivered. You were one of the consummate professionals in communicating what the Queen was doing, why she was doing it, what the significance of it was. But when the moment came for her to speak directly to the nation, it was always a moment of significance.
It was always a moment of significance. And I think we need to put this into context, because you say when she was ready to speak to the nation, she wasn't just speaking to the nation, the United Kingdom. This is the Queen's Commonwealth Christmas message. So she was speaking now, today in 2022, the King will be doing it to 54 nations, because it was reaching out to the Commonwealth in much the same way as her grandfather did in his first Christmas message in 1932, reaching out to the Empire. It was his way of getting out there, and it was the Queen's way in her life of getting out to the Commonwealth, in her own words.
Was there a formula in terms of content? You mentioned, importantly, the Commonwealth, but did the late Queen have a list of, these are the 5 things that must be included in a monarch's Christmas address?
The Queen was always fastidious about what went into the address. Religion was key to it. She was a very religious person, not just because she was Supreme Governor of the Church of England. She was a religious person. She was brought up with religion, and that carried her through her life. The family was important in terms of a message there. The separation of families, be it through conflict, be it by being on duty, or being by demise, was also very important to her. So there were key elements to these Christmas messages. I should add here and now, they were her Christmas messages. She wrote them. Yes, she would get a bit of feedback from Prince Philip. She would always bounce ideas off him, but it was the only time of the year where she could express in her words and not somebody else's, like State Opening in Parliament, which was Downing Street's speech.
The other thing I picked up, and I'm not breaching any confidences at all, but from senior people who were involved on occasion in recording the television one, was that she was an absolute stickler for what we'd call set dressing. and which pictures were either on the table or the desk or imagery that was in the background. And she wanted to make absolutely crystal clear that what she wanted was there and that it could be seen properly because it was there for a purpose.
It was there for a purpose. It was her message, and therefore her message, the set, had to be dressed properly. It was very important to the late Queen that the setting was absolutely right. The photographs were important to her because it wasn't a case of who was in and who was out. It was just something that had to fit the ambience, to fit the message. I mean, for example, when William and Catherine got married in 2011, there were pictures of them on her desk, quite rightly so. That was her choice, and people sort of looked into it and thought, oh yeah, she's sending out a message here. Well, if you interpret a message, then so be it. As far as she was concerned, her message, her dressing.
Yes. When she addressed the nation during the pandemic, there were lots of people in the media and in the world of politics saying this is something that uniquely she can get right, because we're all having a tough time of it. We're losing loved ones. We're not being able to go out and about. We're in dire economic straits and all the rest of it. She's the only one who can get it right. And goodness me, thanks to Vera Lynn, she got it absolutely spot on.
She was spot on, and she is like everybody else. She's being locked in, can't move around in the way that she would want to, can't do her engagements in the way that she would want to, and is locked in with Prince Philip. And incidentally, that particular period of COVID is the longest period that both she and Prince Philip had spent together in their 73 years of marriage. So it was unique in that respect. But it was an opportunity for her to talk to the people about not just how she felt, but how the country felt and how we must all work together to beat this evil virus. And who can forget on the 5th of April 2020, those immortal words, we will see our friends again, we will see our families again, we will meet again. She got it absolutely right, and those immortal words will live on forever and a day.
You mentioned right at the beginning of the conversation, Dickie, and I want to return to it, that to the late Queen, the religious, the faith dimension of Christmas was tremendously important, and on several occasions you alluded to the enormous importance of family to her and to that family itself. This is the first Christmas, of course, without her. Many duties will fall to King Charles, not only as head of state, but also now as head of that family as well. And the final point I want to pick up is the one that you made just then about traditions. And when it is a traditional thing, she gets that right, but there is a little latitude on other occasions. Christmas, for her, was a perfect mixture of both. And she liked the traditional, she liked the old stuff, and she wasn't averse to a little bit of the new. What will Christmas be like this year in your imagination?
For me, the Queen will be missing. I'm still trying to come to terms with the fact that she is no longer with us. But having said that, watching the King, he hit the ground running shortly after she died. And he's been doing an incredible job, as has the Queen Consort. So we have to move on, as she would wish. The King's message will be probably in the same vein, family, religion, because he is religious as well. He is another one-take person. When I was working for him as his press secretary, many times we'd go and do pieces to camera, particularly for the Prince's Trust, and it would be one take. If he wanted to do something again, it was because maybe a bird had tweeted or something had dropped. But he is a consummate professional when it comes to television and addressing, as we saw after the death of his mother. So it will be a different message, but it will carry the same message, the message of religion, the message of Christmas, the message of the family. We will see the King in a new light. The family will mean a lot to him, the loss of his mother, and I'd be surprised if there wasn't mention of his mother in his Christmas message.
Well, I'm sure you and I won't be alone in watching. It's one of the highest rated television programmes every year. Dickie, on a personal note, thank you for your friendship and support and loyalty to us over the year. It's always been a pleasure working with you, but particularly in recent times here at GB News. Thank you very much indeed for your kindness and your friendship. And may we all wish you a very happy Christmas and a peaceful New Year.
And I wish you and all of GB News a very happy Christmas and all the very best for 2023.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the evening of Thursday, the 8th of September, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. It said Her Majesty died peacefully at her Scottish estate in Balmoral, where she spent a lot of her time. What followed was 10 days of state mourning. History was made as we watched the Queen make her final journey from Scotland to London. Queues upon queues across London were formed so that the public could pay their personal respects to Her Majesty as she lay in state in Westminster Hall. We watched on as the grieving family paid their own respects as well through the vigils they held, and then we all came together on the day of the funeral as a country and across the globe said farewell to our beloved Queen. The death of the Queen marked the end of the longest ever reign of a British monarch and the beginning of a new era under King Charles III. We were all witnesses to history as for the first time ever, the proclamation of our head of state was televised. I caught up with royal historian David Starkey, who sat beside me for the majority of our coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth here at GB News. How did David Starkey feel personally when he heard that Queen Elizabeth II had died?
Dare I say what I really felt? Not much. I cannot do what clearly so many people genuinely felt, the sense that somebody who was personal to me had gone. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that with Diana. That was, it's this extraordinary, it's a case, in my view, of the pathetic fallacy of imagining that there's a personal connection when there isn't. But it is part of the magic of monarchy. So she comes in and out of my life, as she did of so many people. And so it's that train of memory that was triggered. And then, of course, the thought, well, actually, this now literally is history.
But I think your key historic and even political point is that on several occasions during our coverage, you repeated that crucial truth which is encapsulated in that observation that we've seen in historic films, that we've read in historic biographies and what have you, and it's about the monarchy. The Queen is dead, comma, long live the King. At that moment, ping, then.
Yes, it is at that moment in one sense, and we saw it very literally, immediately, and despite his very evident personal grief, the King instantly stepping into the shoes and doing it in a way that in some ways, not in some, actually, let's eliminate the moderator, that was much more dramatic than his mother.
And curiously, the next area I want to talk about is the mixture of invention and the mixture of tradition for the great events that then unfolded. An awful lot of this had to be done because it was semi-constitutional, it was how it had always been done. But in terms of services and involvement and folk, her fingerprints were over all of it. Personal choices, personal decisions, going way back.
Yeah, I think it was also, again, the chance, the possibility of her dying in Scotland had already been factored in. So there was a kind of supplementary to Operation London Bridge, which was the again, the fact that your death sounds like a military exercise, which of course it very much was. You then had all of that worked out. Again, it's very difficult because we have not actually none of us were fully privy to the extent to which things were modified by the accident of circumstance or modified by the decisions of the King.
The Accession Council, where, and I think it's reasonable to remind folk who are kind enough to be listening and watching this conversation that you and I both got very excited about it, because this was a first.
Yeah, totally.
This was the first time the Accession Council had been televised.
The Accession Council was a sort of brief abstract of the history of the monarchy and its constitutional significance, just worked out for you there. The idea that the King waits outside whilst they decide whether he really is the King.
His first speech to the nation, you mentioned a little earlier on, when we were reflecting upon that on our coverage, you said he has bared his soul. We now know a little more deep down of what makes this new king tick.
I felt that strongly. I mean, he said things that he'd no need to say. They were very wise that he said them, but he made clear his awareness of the fact that many people had felt that he had overstepped his role as prince. He offered a direct assurance that he understood that being king was different. He, as it were, embraced the limitations on his new role. And what is very striking, isn't it? I mean, he's had the most dramatic of tests, which is from a prime minister who proved to be, this extraordinary figure who bridges two reigns but barely lasts 3 weeks, not going to the COP summit, the thing that for him represented the enduring commitment of a lifetime, simply saying, right, I can't. And that seems to me, again, to be a remarkably dramatic embodiment of I think, his self-awareness.
I want to take you back to the Great Hall of Westminster, not for the King's speech, but for the lying in state there, the London lying in state. We've talked about the one at St Giles's already. We were both deeply moved by that for a whole range of reasons. The first was the sheer volume of her subjects, the citizenry, who queued, most of them queued, and waited for ages and ages and ages to get all of 4 seconds, but also the role of the family, the Prince's vigil, the grandchildren. Talk a little about how that struck you, because it really did at the time. I remember that very poignantly.
It gives you the most powerful sense of the combination of the personal and the office. And one of the things again that strikes you repeatedly through this is, and I speak as an atheist, people have a longing for a meaning that goes beyond themselves, that gives some sort of structure to their life, their family's life, their country's life. And you don't just get it in grandiose historical documents. It's that what anthropologists call the liminal moments: birth, death, marriage. And what monarchy does, of course, in the most dramatic fashion possible, is to combine the personal and the gigantically impersonal. And you could see it in the way people were reacting. The expression on the King's face. I mean, I think there were times when I felt one should be inured to it, and particularly having been on both sides of the television camera. But you could see the tension. I think it was there I felt the tension most strongly between what he was going through privately and publicly.
And finally, as he leads the festivities and attends church and everything else that family has always done at Christmas time, as the head of that family, as well as our head of state, he is surrounded by good people and true.
He is. He's also surrounded by family attention. Christmas traditionally is a time, and the fact that the tensions with one of his sons, that I think we should all feel rather sad about. I think it is sad. It is a blemish. It's a flaw. And it's a pity that it's been as brutally exploited as it has.
The Queen is now buried alongside her beloved husband, Prince Philip, her mother and her sister in the King George VII Memorial Chapel in the grounds of Windsor Castle. And there we have it. You've been watching Remembering Our Queen with me, Alastair Stewart. We will always remember her, despite this year's highs and lows. We have much to look forward to in 2023 under our new monarch. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and I'll see you in the new year.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin